She was young, she was talented, and she was on the brink of becoming a star. But then a stranger showed up at Rebecca Schaeffer's front door with a gun, and in a matter of seconds, she was gone. The man who killed her wasn't a jealous boyfriend or even a Hollywood rival. He was a fan turned stalker who'd been obsessed with her for 3 years. Thanks for watching. I'm Amy. Let's recap. Rebecca Schaeffer had this approachable girl next door quality that casting directors loved. And when she landed My Sister Sam, she went from working actress to primetime TV star almost overnight. But here's the thing. That same warm, friendly persona that made her America's little sister also made her a magnet for obsessive fans. And one of them was a 19-year-old named Robert John Bardo. Robert had a history of fixating on young female stars. He'd even tried to get on the set of Who's the Boss to see Alyssa Milano. He became convinced that Rebecca was the one. And when she sent him a polite fan letter saying something like, "Thanks for the letter, it was the nicest one I've ever gotten," he took it as proof they had a special connection. Robert Bardo was a high school dropout working as a janitor at a Jack in the Box restaurant in Tucson, Arizona. In the year and a half leading up to the murder, he was arrested 3 times for disorderly conduct, doing crazy stuff like running through the neighbors' yards naked, shouting obscenities at people, weird stuff like that. It got him sentenced to a counseling program that he never bothered to go to. So with no career prospects and a whole lot of free time, he spent most of his days glued to the TV. And in the summer of 1986, that's where he first saw Rebecca Schaeffer, in a commercial previewing the show My Sister Sam. According to 2020, that little ad was the start of a years-long obsession. From that point on, he watched and recorded every single episode of everything she was ever in. He wrote her fan letters professing his love. He drew pictures of her, plastered his walls with her headshots and posters. By the summer of 1987, though, he decided that letters weren't enough. He called the My Sister Sam production office over and over, asking to speak to her. And then he showed up at the studio gate with flowers and a giant teddy bear. Security turned him away, but instead of taking the hint, he came back weeks later. They told him to go away again, and that should have been the end of it. But honestly, if you're logical enough to take a hint like that, you're probably not the kind of person who's going to show up at the studio gates with flowers, teddy bears, and then a knife. So that was just the beginning. He started writing more letters, and then he fixated on a scene from one of her movies. Scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills where she appeared in bed with a male actor. And to him, that was a betrayal because in his mind, they were in a relationship. And that's when he started planning a face-to-face meeting, not to talk, to punish. On July 18, 1989, he took a Greyhound bus from Tucson to Los Angeles carrying 3 things: a gun, a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, because of course, and the address to Rebecca Schaeffer's West Hollywood apartment. Apparently, the whole Catcher in the Rye thing came from an earlier stalking trip, this one to New York, where he was hunting for teen pop star Debbie Gibson. He didn't find Debbie. Thank God for her. But he did make a stop at the exact spot where Mark David Chapman shot and killed John Lennon in 1980. And if that's not quite creepy enough, here's the kicker. Chapman famously had a copy of The Catcher in the Rye with him when he pulled the trigger. So Robert decides, yeah, I'll do that. He got Rebecca's home address from a private investigator after reading how another man, Arthur Jackson, had used a PI to track down actress Teresa Saldana in 1982 before he attacked her. And Robert thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do that too. But wait until you hear how this PI got Rebecca's unlisted address. By paying $250 to the California DMV for a copy of her driver's license records. That's it. No warrant, no questions, just, here's her home address. Have a nice day. I gotta say, in 1989, your personal data was less secure than a trapper keeper left on the school bus. It's just after 10 a.m. when he shows up at Rebecca's building and rings the bell to her apartment. She opens the door almost right away because she's expecting a courier to drop off a script for The Godfather Part 3. She's about to audition for the role of Mary Corleone, and later that night, she's supposed to meet with Francis Ford Coppola himself. Well, that part, of course, never happens, and Sofia Coppola, Francis's daughter, ends up playing Mary because of what happens next. At first, Rebecca assumes he's the courier, but then he pulls out a signed photo that she'd sent him years earlier. She realizes, oh, this isn't business, it's a fan thing. So she's still being friendly. She tells him she has to get ready for a meeting, take care of yourself, shakes his hand goodbye, excuses herself, and that should be the end of it, but she doesn't know who she's dealing with, sadly. Robert walks to a diner, orders breakfast, and spends an hour thinking about all the things he really wants to say to her. And then he goes back. This time, when Rebecca sees him at the door, she's not smiling. She tells him firmly to please, she's busy, stop wasting her time. And that's when he says, I forgot to give you something. From behind his back, he pulls out a handgun and shoots her once in the chest, point blank. Her last word is, why? She collapses in the lobby and dies in the hospital. She was only 21. Robert runs. He tosses the gun, the Catcher in the Rye book, a t-shirt. He tosses those into an alley and disappears back to Tucson. But the next day, back in Arizona, he's not exactly hiding. He's running into traffic screaming that he murdered Rebecca Schaeffer. He's sort of trying to kill himself, but kind of half-assing it. But later he'll say, I thought maybe this was something I should do because I owed it to her to kill myself. Police arrest him on the spot. The shooting sends shockwaves through Hollywood and across the country. Her friends, co-stars are devastated and scared because they're wondering, how does a stalker get her home address? Well, like I kind of touched on earlier, in 1989, DMVs across the country were selling personal information. They'll give you the name, address, license numbers, phone numbers to literally anyone who asked and had the cash to pay for it. You didn't even need a reason, just a small fee and the ability to say, hi. Yes, I would like to ruin someone's life, please. Rebecca's case, though, was the tipping point. By 1994, Congress passed the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, making it illegal to share that kind of personal data without consent. Her death also sparked tougher anti-stalking laws in California, protections that have since saved lives, but obviously for Rebecca, those laws came far too late. 2 years later, Robert Bardo finally goes on trial. He waives his right to a jury, but not out of faith in the system, but in exchange for the judge agreeing not to give him the death penalty. He doesn't plead insanity. Instead, his defense argues he has a mental defect and was too mentally ill to have premeditated the crime. But on the other side is prosecutor Marcia Clark. Yes, that Marcia Clark, years before the OJ trial. And she wasn't buying it. She wanted to prove he put a lot of thought into this, which he did. So she called his brother to the stand and he told the judge that he actually bought him the gun because Robert's history of mental illness meant he couldn't pass the background check, a detail that makes it pretty hard to argue that he hadn't already thought about it. And then comes the clincher. The prison psychiatrist testified how Robert reenacted the murder for him and showed him how he hid the gun behind his back, which proved he was concealing his intent. So he was convicted of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of lying in wait. In December 1991, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And today, Robert Bardo is still behind bars in California. Now in his 50s, he told ABC News he takes full responsibility for what he did, saying his thinking back then was so negative and that he blamed everyone else for his problems. He says he still thinks about Rebecca Schaeffer every single day. But he keeps himself busy drawing celebrity portraits like this one of Blake Lively, which is not exactly the hobby you want to see from a convicted celebrity murderer. On that note, asking for Blake, do you think our stalking laws today are as strict as they need to be, or would someone like Bardo still find a way through the cracks? Let's talk about it. Thanks for spending your time with us today. Remember to give this a like and subscribe so you never miss a recap. I'm Amy. Chris and I are here 3 times a week with new stories. See you soon.